Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I'll be reading verse 25 of the 7th canto, chapter 9. Prahlad pacifies the Lord with prayers. This will be the verse also for tomorrow, but we're just gonna read today. Okay? Kutra sisa suti suka migatrisni rupa Kvedam kalebaram asesa rujang viroha Nirvidyate natu jano yad apiti vidwan Kamana lanang madulavay samayang durapay. Translation. In this material world, every living entity desires some future happiness, which is exactly like a mirage in the desert. Where is water in the desert, or in other words, where is happiness in this material world? As for this body, what is its value? It is merely a source of various diseases. The so-called philosophers, scientists, and politicians know this very well. But nonetheless, they aspire for temporary happiness. Happiness is very difficult to obtain, but because they are unable to control their senses, they run after the so-called happiness of the material world and never come to the right conclusion. Srila Prabhupada's purport: there is a song in the Bengali language which states, quote, "I constructed this home for happiness, but unfortunately there was a fire, and everything has now been burnt to ashes," unquote. This illustrates the nature of material happiness. Everyone knows it, but nonetheless, one plans to hear or think something very pleasing. Unfortunately, all of one's plans are annihilated in due course of time. There were many politicians who planned empires, supremacy, and control of the world. But in due time, all their plans and empires, and even the politicians themselves, were vanquished. Everyone should take lessons from Prahlad Maharaj about how we are engaged in so-called temporary happiness through bodily exercises for sense enjoyment. All of us repeatedly make plans which are all repeatedly frustrated. Therefore, one should stop such plan making. As one cannot stop a blazing fire by constantly pouring ghee on it, one cannot satisfy oneself by increasing plans for sense enjoyment. The blazing fire is Baba Mahagdavagni, the forest fire of material existence. This forest fire occurs automatically without endeavor. We want to be happy in the material world, but this will never be possible. We shall simply increase the blazing fire of desires. Our desires cannot be satisfied by illusory thoughts and plans. Rather, we have to follow the instructions of Lord Krishna. Sarva dharman parityaja mam ekam sharanam braja. Then we shall be happy. Otherwise, in the name of happiness, we shall continue to suffer miserable conditions. So don't make plans to be happy in this material world. It's not possible. Srila Prabhupada Ki! So now, we'll commence the glorification and memories of His Grace Vibhu Chaitanya Prabhu, who left his body how many years ago? No, few years ago. No, Vibhu Chaitanya Prabhu. It was actually December. Yeah, this commemorates. So before that, we would like to request Saranga Thakur Prabhu to chant Je Anilo Prema Dana, this song, a lamentation of separation from Lord's associates and great acharyas. Hare Krishna!
Peaceful. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhu bhayevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Yesterday evening, Dharmatma Prabhu called me and asked me to come to this glorification. I'm very happy to be here. I was there at the time he passed away and lived in Vrindavan when he was there. And I was starting to think of his qualities and trying to pick like one word that maybe would sum them all up. That would almost be like a theme for all his qualities. And a theme is something that connects everything, even if they appear to be unrelated. So I thought of one word, because many people are going to hear the stories, and many people have heard the stories many times. So I thought of one word as self-effulgent. And we hear that term, self-effulgent acharya. And what it means is that his spiritual status is obvious, regardless if there's any promotion about it. And and he didn't have a position necessarily that would be highlighted. He wasn't a, class giver, dynamic class giver, or a charismatic kirtan singer. And he did sometimes the most simple things that you wouldn't normally recognize as some great Vaishnav, the one who's handing out the Charanamrita and other things. So it was apparent, and it was so apparent that it was obvious to everyone that was here. And as Dinabandhu knows, it's taken time for us to mature in Krishna consciousness as a community, and they say, even one sociological book that says the first platform of community is conflict. Because before community, there's no conflict because people don't try to get together. Then put them all together from so many nations and so many psychologies and so many different things. And it's not really unified in conceptions and ideas and who you like. But he really was a unifying principle because everyone recognized him. And that's like in the Sadgoswamis. Dira, Dira, Janapriyo, Priyakaro, Namatsaro, Pujitao. That the six Goswamis were glorified that they were worshipped by everyone, both the Dira and Adira. And we had the Dira and Adira. And Hare Krishna. So, and what really becomes self-effulgent in someone and recognized is not their talents, but their devotion. And that's universally accepted. And we saw that devotion. And one symptom, I would say, of devotion is beauty, because when you have devotion, you want to offer the best. So when people have devotion, it generally, the things they do take on a certain attractiveness. And just a simple example, and I think more people will tell the stories, how he handed out the Charanamrita. He perfected it. Because there was devotion. The nature of devotion is it's not dependent on externals. There's no obstacle that can stop devotion. It's described like when water's coming from a mountain to the sea. You can't put anything before it. It's going to somehow go around it. So we also saw that his devotion, and it was so apparent, that it cannot be checked, even to the extent when he was confined to his room. It still became such an offering of devotion. God brothers and God sisters will tell you about the gifts that he was giving everyone. They'll tell you about how he, maybe in more detail, how even though he couldn't be in the temple, just the pictures he had on his shelves were constantly being decorated. And I remember one thing that was really touching, because devotion is ultimately an internal thing. And when it manifests, we can kind of see into someone's soul. The day that he was passing away, I remember at one time I went into the room, and what the doctor does, and I guess this is just professional, before the person goes out of consciousness but hasn't left the world, the doctor has to get his last desires. There were 3 of them. I only remember 2 of them. One, don't take me out of Vrindavan. Don't take me out of Vrindavan. And I think people will also tell you about that, about how he was so internally satisfied that he didn't have to move from these walls. It was so wonderful. And the other one was, don't let anybody serve me. That's bhakti. Anyabilashita shunyam jnana karma jnanavritam anukuyena krishnanu shilana bhakta uttama. That all you want is the pleasure of Krishna. Militantly. Militantly wanted the pleasure of Krishna. And anyabilashita shunyam. And no other desires. Because especially when one gets sick, it's kind of an opportunity to be the center of the world. And he wouldn't tolerate it. And on, and then when you'll hear about from the people who are the pujaris, what his level of service was. Before we had gas stoves, when you were cooking on coal, and how one person was cooking all the offerings and all the sweets, one person. And I'll just finish with one thing, because people have so many stories and things to tell. And it was after he couldn't do it anymore because of his health. He couldn't anymore cook. And he was climbing up the Gurukul building. He was walking upstairs, and I was walking downstairs. And this is like, and he looked at me, and he laughed, and he said, 6 men. Because that's how many it took to do his service. He was amazed. It took 6 people to do his service. So we were very fortunate to get his association, and we also should be cognizant that the great souls are not just the people that have passed, that they're still living here in the mandir. There are also people that are quite effulgent for their service and only want to please Prabhupada. And it's all Prabhupada's mercy, what he created and what he gave us, especially the great souls that he gave us. Vibhu Chaitanya Prabhu ki jai.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti-Vedanta Swamini Tinamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharane Nivasesha Sunyavadi Pashkati Desutarane Om Aganataminandasya Jana Jana Salakaya Chaksus Militan Jana Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manabhistam Stapitam Jana Bhutale Sayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Sa Pandantikam Manchakalpatubhyascha kripasindhubhya patitanam prabhinebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Thank you, Dhanada Maharaj, for such a nice speaking about Vibhu Chaitanya Prabhu. Oddly enough, I was also trying to think of one word that summed up Vibhu Chaitanya Prabhu, but I came up with a different word other than self-effulgent. It was sincere. Vibhu Chaitanya Prabhu was 100% sincere. Prabhupada was once asked in the very early days of the Krishna consciousness movement about some philosopher. How was this philosopher, Western philosopher, Krishna conscious? And Prabhupada's reply was, his sincerity is his Krishna consciousness. And basically, that is what we have to offer Krishna, because Krishna has everything, everything rests upon him. But our sincere desire, sincere and simple desire to please him is what we have to offer, and Krishna relishes that very much. And also similar to Maharaj, I won't tell the stories except one little one at the end, which was one of my desires, how Krishna fulfilled one of my desires. And that I had always desired to be with Vibhu Chaitanya, because he was older than us, so we expected he would leave this world before us, so I wanted to be present. And then I had the fortune to be holding his hand for maybe 5 hours before he left that whole time. So that I consider that such a blessing and a fortune. But instead of telling the stories or pastimes of Vibhu Chaitanya, I would like to read something that he wrote. I think he wrote many things in Bengali, and I think only one of them survived. And I think this really shows his simple sincerity and devotion. This is called Yata Dharma Tata Jaya. Where there is Dharma, there is victory. One must suffer for sinful activities. Arjuna was on the path of Dharma, therefore he became victorious. Just to kill a mosquito, one will slap one's own cheek, and the same happened to the Kauravas. On the path of honesty, there are many obstacles, but at the end, there is nectar. So Vibhu Chaitanya Prabhu was fully fixed in Dharma on every level, perfectly honest and perfectly devoted. And he was perfectly surrendered to Srila Prabhupada and his mission, and his desire was to serve the deities, and he desired to serve the devotees who he saw as sincerely trying to surrender. On the path of honesty, there are many obstacles, but at the end, there is nectar. The door is open for dishonesty. The thief is never peaceful. Even after stealing, he is always in fear that I'm going to be caught by someone and the sin is on my shoulders. Kunti Devi, the mother of the Pandavas, always prayed for miseries, because I will forget you, Krishna, if there are no miseries. Vishvase Milaya Krishna Tarke Bahadur. By faith, one can reach Krishna, but by argument, one cannot. The Lord is only satisfied by devotion. One must give up his selfish motivation. One cannot do devotional service with selfish motivation. We are acting in this Sri Krishna Balaram Mandir just like an opera party actor. After getting certain responsibilities here in Krishna Balaram Mandir, one freely spends money as he likes. But they don't know that after the stage program is over, the king does not remain king. We are all acting like that. And because he was so sincere, he had the liberty and pure, he had the liberty and he took the opportunity to chastise and set a very high standard for the activities that should be performed by the devotees serving in Krishna Balaram Mandir. Just like sin and mercury, by occurring sin one must suffer, and by eating mercury it becomes visible in the body. Abai's mother was eating with her left hand. Abai asked his mother, "Why are you eating with your left hand?" Then she started eating with her right hand. It was a vow she had taken for Abai's spiritual benefit. Who is a sadhu in this age of Kali? Those who are truthful, they are the actual sadhus. Merely by wearing saffron one cannot become a sadhu, and by wearing neck beads one cannot become a Vaishnava. One who has firm faith in the absolute truth can obtain the Lord of the absolute truth. A teacher told his students that I will give every one of you a piece of sandesh. If you can eat it hiding in a place where no one sees you, then I will give you more sweets. All the students went out happily, but one small boy thought, how will I be able to eat it without anyone watching? The teacher told him to try. The next day, all the students came back and described how they ate their sweet without being observed by anyone. Some reported to have eaten it in a dense jungle, some hiding in old buildings, and so on. But the small boy, he did not return. The teacher told them, "Let the small boy come back, and then I will give you enough sweets." When the boy returned, the teacher asked why he was late. The boy replied, "I tried my best, but as I was ready to eat, I saw that someone was always observing me." The boy was spiritually enlightened. Once, while traveling through the forest, Lord Ram felt very thirsty. He went to a pond, and upon reaching it, he loaded his bow with an arrow and pierced the earth. Upon returning, he saw a frog pierced by his arrow. Lord Ramachandra asked, "Why didn't you give any signal when I loaded my bow?" The frog replied, "Whenever I am in danger, I call out, 'Ram, Ram, save me, save me.' But if Lord Ram is killing me, then to whom shall I call out and go to for help?" If the Lord wants to kill someone, then no one can save him. The Lord is always with everyone and never brings them any inauspiciousness. Once there was a scarcity in the time of Lord Buddhadev. He asked, "Who wants to take the responsibility for this scarcity?" No one wanted to take it. One girl from a poor family came forward and humbly offered to take responsibility. "I have a treasury at home," she said. "In the morning I will beg from door to door, and my pot will supply endlessly. I can save the world by begging." Everyone should learn from everyone. From a dog we can learn expertise in eating, being satisfied by having a little, sleeping undisturbed and quickly waking up. From an ass we can learn akatare averam gurubhavai kiva sitte kiva grisme kata nahai. They are carrying heavy loads continuously, but they are never exhausted be it summer or winter. The wonderful blue lotuses are blossoming in the pond and charming the mind of the beholder. Many bumblebees are enjoying honey from the lotus and making a gun-gun sound, but a day comes when there are no lotuses left to attract the buzzing bees. Similarly, when men are in a wealthy situation, many friends come to meet them, but when their situations are not so lavish, no one comes. One day a rich man gave some Lakshmi to his poor friend. He was returning home. He kept the Lakshmi in his pagri, his turban. But one bird came from a nearby coconut tree and snatched his pagri because the times were very bad. But when his good time arrived, he saw his turban along with his Lakshmi kept nicely on the tree. Some of these are very subtle. One day an elephant was walking near the marketplace and a few dogs were barking at him, but the elephant kept walking towards his destination, undisturbed. Similarly, real sadhus carry out their sadhan bhajan without being disturbed by thousands of criticisms. Who is a sadhu? Two kinds of maya are there. One is vidya and the other is avidya. There are two kinds of vidya maya and 6 kinds of avidya maya. Vivek and vairagya are the vidya mayas, and kam, krodh, lobh, moha, mada, and matsarja, these are the avidya mayas. One day, a man was passing near one house and heard someone crying inside. He entered the house and saw that a mother was crying with her dead son on her lap. The man asked her, "Why are you crying?" The mother replied, "My Gopal has left me forever." The man said, "You used to feed Gopal, you used to kiss him, but after giving you some Vatsalya Yuma, he left you forever." Give up Maya. Do you know how Maya is? It is just like an aquatic algae which covers the water of a pond. If one can get rid of it by splashing water and blocking it using bamboo, the aquatic algae won't spread again. This is called vivek, discrimination. And vairagya means to be freed from all desire for sense objects. Please give up this maya of illusion. Don't be disturbed by the sense objects. Keep the lotus feet of Sri Hari as the only object for your life and soul and heart. Please call continuously the captain of this bhava world. Otherwise, there is no way to be protected at the end. Those who are always enjoying happiness cannot experience the miseries of miserable persons. How will one know the pain of poison if he hasn't been bitten by a snake? So Vibhu Chaitanya Prabhu was fully sincere, and as Maharaj said, self-effulgently so, completely obviously so, and he was a person who completely practiced as he preached. Vibhu Chaitanya Prabhu ki jai.
I feel very honored to be able to speak on this day of Vibhu Chaitanya's passing, because he was such an incredibly great soul, as we all know. But it was a great honor to have known him, even for a small moment in time. I think, if anything, that in a sense, Vibhu Chaitanya was definitely like everyone's Shiksha Guru. All the devotees who were present and doing service in Krishna Balaram Mandir, took him as an example of what great service was all about. And I think the verse today describes him so completely, someone who was not ever falling into the illusion of the material world. From morning to night, he was serving, and he was never, ever expecting anything for that service. So selfless service was there. I think if I had to choose a word for Vibhu Chaitanya, it would be pure. He was, in everything that he did, exceedingly pure. So in the morning you would see him getting up before everyone else, before Mangal Arti, and he had to go someplace, I never knew where, in the Gurukula to break the bituminous coal that he was going to use in his fires. And ever since I met him, he was very crippled. It's like, it seemed he was born that way. So by the time he was here and serving in Krishna Balaram Mandir, he was already seemingly old and somewhat physically handicapped, yet he would carry those big buckets of bituminous coal all the way into the kitchen. And he started the fire, I'm sure by mantra, because no one else could start those bituminous fires except him. They were down in the mud, and he would get down there, and he had this way of fanning them, and then eventually the fire would come and his day would begin, and he would then take the opportunity to cook every offering. And he, sick or not sick, Vibhu Chaitanya was there. So he was always our example of how we should serve. He came from Navadvip, as far as I understand. He was a shopkeeper somewhere in Navadvip, and yet here he was, giving us an example of how to serve in a very pure way. So I had just some experiences with him. I wanted to learn how everyone loved his cooking. Of course, he said he had been trained by Radharani, and that she was always telling him what to do and how to cook and what to put in and how much to put in. And because he would serve so many hours, he was not able to actually chant his rounds. But at one point, Prabhupada came to him and said that he would, if he would sing all day while he's cooking, there was no need for him to chant his rounds. So Vibhu Chaitanya was always singing. Morning to night, if you went anywhere near the kitchen, you would hear his beautiful little bhajan that was going, and it never stopped. So he was not only preparing the food, but he was also overseeing that it was transferred correctly, that it was distributed correctly, that the bhoga was coming in correctly. And it was absolutely amazing that he had time enough to do all of that in such a personal way. He touched the hearts of every devotee who was present here, as I feel he's touching everyone's heart who's here today. So one time, everyone loved his kachoris the most. They were super. They were the best anywhere in the world. But I also loved his glubjmans. They were the best. And in the very beginning of the temple, there was a big pot of glubjmans always back near the prasadam table, and they were 1 rupee each. And most of us didn't even have 1 rupee to buy a glubjaman, but every once in a while, I would get one of his glubjamans. So I asked him one day if I could come in and learn how to make glubjamans, and he agreed that that would be possible. So I went in and I watched him make something that I was never going to be able to follow. The way he moved around the kitchen was like a dance. There was never one wasted movement. It was absolutely amazing. He picked up the spoon because he was going for something, and then as he was going for something, he would pick up the karai. You know, it was just continuously this beautiful, very meaningful, and you could see that his consciousness was just there in every moment that he was, that in every movement that he made. And he had no facility, really. There were a couple karais, there were a couple pots and pans, and he did every offering with just this small facility. And the only thing that he had to measure were these spoons. So he would say, 2 spoons of suji, 2 spoons of this, 2 spoons of that, or half a spoon, or a quarter of a spoon. And it was almost, I became bewildered immediately. And this was how he made everything, and that's how he would teach. Purnima Mataji also tried to learn from him, and she told me the story just the other day, that when she tried to go in and learn from him, she said, I've come, I want to learn how you make rasgulla. He said, Mataji, he said, you will never be able to do this. She said, why? You know, I'm going to learn from you, you're an expert. He said, no, Mataji. He said, you will never have the bhav that is necessary. And Vibhu Chaitanya had the bhav. Everyone knew it. He had been granted that. Now thinking back of him, I don't think he was of this world. Just as Krishna brings his associates, Prabhupada also brought his. I'm sure Vibhu Chaitanya was one of those. He was here to teach us purity and also perfection, because everything he did is, as was spoken by before, even when he had to retire and just give out Charnamrit because his body was too old, he did it perfectly. Every time you'd go up to take Charnamrit, he would correct the way you held your hand. You know, he'd say, no, a little more like this, and he'd show you exactly how to hold your hand and how to drink it, exactly how to drink it. Everyone, Indians, children, everyone, he would give that instruction. And I think the only sadness he had was when he could no longer cook all the offerings. I think that was really for him very, very difficult. There were many times that he would be in the kitchen and I would be going over to the Gurukula where the Mukut was, and sometimes I'd be very discouraged, I'd be very worried, I'd be wondering about so many different things, and I'd be walking under the kitchen. And I'd be walking, and often it was in the hot season, I think, when it was really, really, really hot. And I would, all of a sudden, I'd hear, Mataji, Mataji, Aja, Aja. I'd become so happy because I knew that he was calling me to distribute some nectar from Krishna Balaram. And with those gifts that he would give of the Mahaprasad, everything would disappear from all the worries. And he would reconnect you to what Krishna consciousness and what service was all about. So, thank you.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutle Srimati Bhakti-Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavari Paschati Desa Tarine. It's been 10 years, and each year always trying to churn up more nectar, remembering different pastimes with Vibhu Chaitanya Prabhu. So when Vibhu Chaitanya came here, he quickly got initiated by Srila Prabhupada. He was cooking that day. He ran out, sat in the installation for the initiation for some time and ran right back into the kitchen. At that time I was in Mayapur doing some service, and I came back. In those days, this temple, the devotees were so poor, so I came back and immediately wanted to get back into my old services here. So got fixed up in Prabhupada's house, and then right away ran to the deity kitchen. And I saw, there's a new face here. That was Vibhu Chaitanya. So in Mayapur, I had picked up a little Bengali, and we were able to talk. And immediately I, asked if I could help him, because I saw he was doing all the services. So whenever there was time, I would run in and help Vibhu Chaitanya with cooking, setting up the plates, whatever he needed. So I got to watch him and learn from him. And I saw the perfection with which he was able to cook all the offerings. And he was teaching me at the same time, because we were able to speak a little bit. And it turned out that at that time, Vibhu Chaitanya was very sick. So he needed a replacement. So he started to train me how to do the Rajbhog offering. And I got to watch exactly. Cooking it's a science. It's like chemistry. You have to know exactly what to put in order to get the right taste, to get the right flavor. And when you're cooking huge amounts and everything has to be exactly on time, you have to be so methodical. So I got to see how he did everything. He had a big pot of pre-cut potatoes, and then he had little containers of different sabjis. And everything was so clockwise perfect. He just put everything on the stove at the right time, everything was, whatever he did was exactly to perfection when he cooked. And just watching him became such an inspiration how to become a perfect cook. So when he went for his operation, which was probably the only time that he ever left the temple, there was a gap and I got to cook at that time. But then within 10 days, although it was a serious operation, within 10 days, he came right back into the kitchen again and wanted to start again. And at that time, he had to accept a little help. So he had some boys with him also helping. And then he was so strict in the way that he cooked. It was freezing cold that winter. It was 1976. It was so cold, but he wouldn't wear anything on his feet because he knew that you're not supposed, you have to be barefoot when you're in the kitchen. So what happened was, on the bottom of his feet, he got water inside, water retention. So he had to go through a very painful operation again to remove all the water from his feet. And after that, then he relented and he started to wear wooden shoes in the kitchen. And he considered that the altar was Krishna's favorite place and the kitchen was Radharani's favorite place. So Vibhu Chaitanya was truly my Siksha Guru. I learned from him so much, and our relationship went on. Whenever I had time, I would run in to help him. And we stayed in those days, Prabhupada had very strict rules. All the Matajis stayed in one room, that was room number 7. And I would hear at about 2 o'clock in the morning some banging outside of the room. So I came out one morning and I saw it was Vibhu Chaitanya, and that was where he would break up the coal for the fires. So he would take those fires then, take the coal, and as Vidya Mataji was saying, he would make the fires for the whole day. And those fires had to be replenished. So we saw the intense humility and endeavor and the love that Vibhu Chaitanya had for Srila Prabhupada and for Krishna Balaram Gaur-Nitai and Shri Shri Radha Shyam Sundar, how he dedicated his whole life to serving them. And for me, he's a daily inspiration because though we came here in our youth, and Vibhu Chaitanya, he was about 55 when he came here. For us, we never thought we'd make it that, to age 55. Now we're all way past that. So we saw him as an old man still serving. And now as our age is going on, and just like yesterday, I read that Jayadvaita Swami, he just retired as BBT trustee. So his reasons were, now in old age, we have to let the next generation come and do service in our place. And we can try to help them. So Vibhu Chaitanya, though it was a heartbreaking thing, after some years, he just couldn't lift the pots anymore and he couldn't do all of that service in the kitchen. So he had to leave the kitchen, and from there he took up the Charanamrit Seva, yes? Right. And with the same dedication, with the same bhav, with the same devotion to their lordships and to the devotees also, he carried on with that service for so many years. So as we grow old and we have to relinquish our services because of physical disability or mental disability, whatever it is, I'm learning and remembering always Vibhu Chaitanya, how everything was done. He carried the exact same mentality onto the next service until to the point, and every morning at Mangal at the Prabhupada Samadhi Artik, I remember Vibhu Chaitanya because he never missed a single morning. Even when he was bent over at not only, it wasn't 90 degrees, it was more like 45 degrees, he would still walk to Prabhupada's Samadhi Mangalarti every single day and be standing in front of Prabhupada's Murti there every morning until he just couldn't walk anymore. So that type of devotion I never saw in anyone except for Vibhu Chaitanya. And I'm praying that as our old age overtakes us, I can always follow in his footsteps. Now, when Vibhu Chaitanya couldn't even walk anymore, he had to stay in room number 5 of the guest house. And that was a brahmachari room. All the pujaris stayed there. But he missed the devotees. He couldn't walk. He refused to go in a wheelchair, though we tried many times to get him to come to the temple. But unless he could walk, he just wasn't willing to come in the temple. So he would try to get us to visit him. But for myself, I never wanted to go because it was a brahmachari ashram, practically. So he would send prasadam to us in the office. He would, somehow or other, he would cook even in his room. He had a little stove on the floor, he had a tiffin. So he would send that to, and with one of the pujaris, I think it was Sanatan Prabhu, saying, Vibhu Chaitanya is calling you, he wants you to come visit him and give me this whole tiffin of prasadam. And I would feel so embarrassed. I'd give the prasadam to Dinabandhu. I'd say, you go see him, you go see him. I can't go there. And finally, it was such a helpless plea that no, you have to go see Vibhu Chaitanya, he's calling you. So I went there one day, and when I saw his condition, the same eyes, the same smile, the same beautiful effulgence, but he couldn't walk anymore. And he was there surrounded by all of his pictures, and what he would do was, the pujaris would bring him the Maha garlands, and he would take those Maha garlands apart. Now, whoever thought of such a thing? He would take the Maha garlands apart, take out all the good flowers that hadn't wilted, and remake garlands and put them onto his pictures. He was such a bhakta, so much love for their lordships. So eventually it became a daily habit. I'd run around every day trying to grab devotees. In fact, one Mataji just told me, oh, you took me to Vibhu Chaitanya's room one day. And he gave me a glass and a spoon. That was Vibhu Chaitanya had a whole border full of glasses and spoons, so that anyone who came to see him, he would give them this gift of glass and spoon. So it was a daily thing. I'd grab whatever devotees had just come to Vrindavan, and we go see Vibhu Chaitanya up until the last day. And then last day, we all came to see him. He wasn't conscious when I went to see him. They yelled in, I think it was Burijan, that we had come to see him. He nodded. And I had brought one masseuse, one devotee who was expert in massage, a male devotee. He was trying to give Vibhu Chaitanya a massage. And it was the day before he left. And the devotee was crying because he could tell from Vibhu Chaitanya's physical, when he was massaging him, that Vibhu Chaitanya was about to leave. So when he came out of the room, he was crying, and he said, no, Vibhu Chaitanya is going now. And then the next day, Vibhu Chaitanya left. So every day I remember Vibhu Chaitanya. I hold him in such esteem, with so much love, and I pray that I can follow in his footsteps, somehow or other, be as humble and devoted as he is, and pray that you can all also get that bhav that he had. Hare Krishna.
Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chaksurun Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Panchakalpatrubhyascha kipasindhuevacha Patitanam bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So I think most of the younger devotees and visiting devotees never knew about Vibhu Chaitanya. In fact, practically only those people who lived in Krishna Balaram Mandir, we knew about him. And he showed that that person who's always in the limelight is not necessarily the great devotee. We know all the big devotees, but he showed that just as everyone said, it was his devotion, it was his bhav that made him a great devotee. And nobody knew him outside of our Krishna Balaram community, but he was such a wonderful devotee. I remember when I first joined Krishna Balaram Mandir, there was 2 dadus. There was that one dadu who did the Charanamrita. What was his name? Huh? Vishnupad. There was 2 dadus, Vishnupad and Vibhu Chaitanya. Unfortunately, Vishnupad's relatives dragged him away when he got too old, and he died outside of Braj. But as we heard from Dhanadhar Swami, Vibhu Chaitanya said, he didn't even want to leave his room when Gurukul took over those rooms. It was a big trauma for him to move downstairs. We wanted, we had to say that downstairs you don't have to go up and downstairs. But he was amazing. As Devi Shakti said, he'd get up at 2 o'clock in the morning to break the coal, to cook on these crazy coal-fired stoves, and then he would be there till well after the 12 o'clock arti. He'd clean up and everything, then he'd come up to his room, take prasadam. Then he would always feed the birds, much to the temple commander's chagrin. He would always feed all the birds. So there's always, and they all knew, all these little minor birds would collect on the railing there outside his room because they knew he was coming to feed. He would always feed the birds. And then again, he'd come back in the afternoon. Again, he was cooking. And till late at night, by after 10 o'clock, he would come up. I don't know how he did it, especially at his age. I mean, now we're getting, as Devi Shakti said, our old age is taking over, so we can't do those things anymore. I don't know how he did it. He was just as we said, his sincerity and his devotion. He was amazing. And he's the only devotee that Prabhupada told not to chant rounds. He said, just chant. And you would go by the kitchen, you would hear such a sweet kirtan. Always he was just cooking and chanting Hare Krishna, the most sweetest tunes. It was so wonderful. And gradually, as people pointed out, he began to bend over, and finally he just couldn't do it anymore. And it was such a sad day when the temple manager had to tell him, you can't go in the kitchen anymore. And then he would sit right here on the, where they have these things like this, the garden. He would sit there right outside the door. He couldn't go to the kitchen, so he would sit there and chant. So finally they figured the best service for him was the Charanamrita. And as everyone said, even that was, Charanamrita is such a simple service, but he did that with so much devotion. I didn't know about this training how to hold your hand, because I only knew that somehow or other when you come, he would grab your hand and electricity would come. There was such devotion. You just grab your hand and this devotion would fly into your body. He would always, everybody, he would just grab their hand and hold it, and put the Charanamrita. He did it with so much devotion. And I can remember when I was temple president, I knew that I got Radharani's mercy when Vibhu Chaitanya would come in my office with Mahaprasad. That was a special thing. He did it to everyone. He would always come, but you knew that day I got special mercy from Radharani. Because as we heard, he learned cooking from Radharani. He said Krishna's favorite place is the temple, and he never left. We only heard that one time for the operation. And I think there was some other time he had to leave, but he never went outside the 4 walls of Krishna Balaram Mandir. It's the most amazing. He's completely opposite me. All the time I'm outside the walls of Krishna Balaram. He never left. Everything is here, He was such an amazing devotee. So it was, finally he couldn't even do the Charanamrita, so it's such an amazing room, you can see the picture. There's all these pictures there. I didn't know about this, taking the garlands apart and stringing the fresh flowers. But he couldn't do anything, so he would just sit there in his room and worship. He had this picture, it was just like a waterfall of mercy. You see the picture there. That's at the end, Vibhu Chaitanya. And it's true that everybody said everything he did with so much grace and so much devotion. and he wasn't, like a known devotee that everybody knows and he's all over the world, people listening to his tapes and this and that. No, he was a completely unknown devotee, but he had so much devotion. He was such a great devotee. I feel very fortunate. Dandara Swami told me whenever he had to leave Vrindavan, he would go and beg Vibhu Chaitanya for the mercy to return. He was such a devotee like that. I wish I could remember. Devi Saksha remembers her. I wish I could remember. I always, quite often remember him and always think of him and the devotion that he showed. And we just pray someday, somehow or other, we can get a little peace, especially as old age takes over us. We just pray that we can get some devotion, some sincerity like Vibhu Chaitanya Prabhu. Shri Vibhu Chaitanya Prabhu ki! So I hope some of the younger devotees can get some understanding. Everybody's telling little qualities, but all of his lifestyle I wanted to explain to everybody so you can know who is Vibhu Chaitanya. So last I'd like to ask Her Grace Mahadevi Mataji to come and give her memories of Vibhu Chaitanya. Hare Krishna.
Vibhu Chaitanya Prabhu ki jai. Vanchakalpatarubhishya kripa sindhu bhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Thanks. So Maharaj said self-effulgent. Bhurijan said sincerity. And I was also thinking some qualities. And what came to my mind was humility. Humility in its most pure form. He was genuinely a humble sadhu and also very childlike at the same time. In 1986-87, I was organizing and doing a girls' school over on the Prikrama path, and we had the daughters of many of the senior foreigner devotees here in that program. And we would do academics in the morning and then do Prikrama Kirtan in the afternoon. And we would always come to noon arti. And Vibhu Chaitanya was always there with the Charanamrita, and the girls would line up and he would make sure that their hand was just so. And he would only put in enough so that you wouldn't spill it. And he would watch and make sure that each girl would take it properly. And I was, even my own two daughters who are almost 35, 38 now, they still remember that. And they still remember his face, which would be so, as someone was effulgent, just effulgent with bhakti, love, and appreciation for other devotees. He was such a humble person that no matter who came in front of him, he would pranam, and it was very sincere how he would do that. And I remember that one time Bhakti Charu Swami, he came and he gave a class about how Prabhupada was upstairs and he was supposed to be fasting. And he smelled kachoris cooking in the kitchen. And this was Vibhu Chaitanya cooking the kachoris. And at that time, Prabhupada hadn't eaten any solids for quite some time. So he ordered Bhakti Charu Swami to go down and get the kachoris. And he brought them up, 2 or 3 kachoris, and Prabhupada ate them with great relish. And another thing about that is that the kachoris were actually already on the Lord's plates. But Vibhu Chaitanya he just took them right off and put them on Prabhupada's plate and brought the kachoris up. And everyone, I think Bhavananda was there and Bhakti Charu Swami, they were so amazed how Prabhupada hadn't eaten for so long and he was relishing these kachoris. And this is the loving relationship that Prabhupada had with Vibhu Chaitanya and how much Vibhu Chaitanya loved Prabhupada. And so as his health as his back was going down, devotees would try to help him across the temple room, but he didn't want to accept any help. He just wanted to make it from one point to the next point, and you could see in his face, as someone already mentioned, he had a purpose for each thing that he did. And I remember how he would, somehow or another, with great difficulty, he would offer his full dandavats to Srila Prabhupada, and always with his hands folded to all the different Vaishnavas along the way. So I too would like to remember the qualities of such a amazingly simple, sincere, hardworking, very devoted to Srila Prabhupada, such the real meaning of sadhu, living very simply. I remember when Daivi Shakti would take us to his room, and he was just so happy to give something to the devotees, and he was so happy when we would see his wonderful decorations of his altar, and we would say something about the Lords, and he was just, anybody who came into his room, he would give that special recognition to, and appreciation. Yes, that would be another word, appreciation of the devotees. Vibhu Chaitanya had that wonderful quality. So I was very happy when he received the Samadhi space at our Goshala Samadhi, and it's we're very fortunate that we can, even if we don't know him or didn't know him personally or lived here when he was here, we can go to his Samadhi and we can ask for his blessings. And by hearing, Prabhupada says, seeing is hearing. So by hearing about the wonderful qualities of these pure devotees, then we also can get strength for our own path of devotion. Hare Krishna. Glories to Vibhu Chaitanya Prabhu.